Hello and welcome to NJ.com's live chat with Vicki Hyman about last night's Bravo interview with Teresa and Joe Giudice. How you doing today, Vic?
I'm doing good, Anthony. We've got to stop meeting like this.
We do. All right, I'm just going to get it right out there. That was an odd interview, and that's how I felt. To me, it felt awkward. It felt rushed. I'm sure I'm not alone, but I want to know what your initial thoughts were while you were watching.
Well, you have to understand that they did this the day after they were sentenced, and Teresa, as she made it abundantly clear, did not think she was going to get any time at all, and now she's facing 15 months. So I think that probably accounts for some of the awkwardness. Also, you know, they just don't seem to have fully grasped how the public feels about them and what their public wants them to do at this point, which, you know, it's their prerogative to respond however they want. But if people were tuning in to see them sort of apologize, show remorse, they did not get that.
Well, right, and that I was just going to ask you that. I mean, you know, obviously Teresa looked positively spent, but other than perhaps looking tired, you don't think that the public got that they were showing any sort of remorse? I mean, you certainly didn't feel like that. That's what you just said, correct?
Right. Joe, he barely could be bothered to acknowledge his guilt, that he pleaded guilty already. He's not going to lose anything by saying, you know, yes, I did it, even though Andy was kind of going after him to sort of like, well, you did this, right? He's like, yeah, I did this, whatever. Teresa showed more remorse in court than he did, and she seemed to be, you know, very shaken up and very sorry this happened to her, although the word sorry actually never left her mouth last night, although it did in the courtroom.
I want to ask what your impressions were of two particular quotes that Teresa said. She said that, "I thought my lawyer was going to fight for me." That's what lawyers do. Did her lawyer fight for her? I mean, why would she think that?
Well, at some point, there was a disconnect with Teresa, because there is no doubt that the recommended federal sentencing guidelines say she was supposed to get between 21 and 27 months in the case. The plea deal is 7 pages long. I posted a link to it in a couple of my posts on NJ.com, and it says you could actually get as much as 35 years in prison maximum. Okay. And it's really not that hard to understand, the plea deal. Her lawyers did put up a really good fight in the courtroom. That's part of the reason why the sentencing hearing lasted 6.5 hours. They were trying every single tactic they could try to get the judge to show them leniency, but the judge was not buying it. Right.
Well, I hope ultimately she realizes that. But let's talk about the other head scratcher of the night. Teresa said that she has to be more careful about what she signs in the future. Now, do you think she realizes that it was her husband that made her sign all these documents?
Well, I think she realizes it, but I don't know if she's willing to admit it. The quote was very odd. She said, you know, when I'm not used to dealing with contracts. I have to make sure I read things. I have to make sure I get a lawyer if I don't understand what's going on. But that's not what really got her into trouble here. It was that Joe was giving her things to sign. He was doing things in her name. It was her husband doing this. And when she's talking about, like, I'm trustworthy, I believe other people, the other people is her husband. And there was no indication that her husband, who was sitting next to her, that she blamed him at all for this.
Okay, well put. All right, so let's get to Joe Giudice. His responses last night seemed to teeter somewhere between it is what it is and I got to do what I got to do. Mm-hmm. Like, what was going through Joe's mind last night? I mean, he's on this national stage. This was the time for him to tell everyone, I'm sorry, I'm ready to pay the piper. What's going on with Joe Giudice?
I think he really doesn't want to be there, and of course I've gotten that impression throughout watching the show for the last 6 years that I don't really think this is his bag. I don't think he wants to do any of this. Right. But yeah, I mean, like he said, I think at least twice about the charges, about his guilt, whatever, the fake W-2s, whatever. I honestly don't know what's going on in his mind, other than he would have wished to be anywhere but sitting next to his wife in front of Andy Cohen at that moment.
And you mentioned it before. I mean, Andy Cohen basically made Joe admit his guilt about, whatever, the fake W-2s. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the first time we really ever got a sense of guilt from Joe, correct?
That was, I think, the first time he admitted that he did something wrong. I can't remember the full extent of his sentence in court, but he said, I'm humiliated, I've disgraced my family, I think I'm going to try to be a better man. I'm not sure about that last part, but he didn't say what Teresa said, which is, I am more sorry than you will ever know. He didn't say that.
Walking into court, and as they always did, every time they walked into court, they were noticeably stoic. Last night, Teresa looked like she was going to break down in tears. To me, after many of the questions, do you think Andy Cohen was trying to make her crack a little bit?
Oh, I wouldn't put it past Andy to try to make her crack. I actually disagree. I don't think that she looked like she was going to burst into tears. She said at the end of the episode that she felt numb, and that's what she looked like to me. She looked spent and numb. Like, what else are you going to ask me? I can't even deal with this anymore.
All right.
But not like she was going to cry. Not to me.
All right. While we're on the subject of Andy, I mean, there were some rumors that Bravo paid the couple $325,000 for that exclusive interview. Cohen took to Twitter last night and labeled it as misinformation. Now, there was a comment on NJ.com that questioned the fact that the Giudices can't profit from any illegal activity under the Son of Sam law. Now, are they profiting or paying restitution if, in fact, they were paid for that interview? I mean, I want you to explain this because I know you've written about it extensively.
Well, I mean, even if they're using the money to pay for restitution, that's still profiting. They're just, paying the people they need to pay off. But it's the Son of Sam laws have become much more specific over the years. They were started in 1977 as a result of David Berkowitz trying to, I think, sell his story to the public, and the New York legislators were like, no way. And so they passed a law, but it's been whittled back because it really violates First Amendment rights. So the expert at Rutgers School of Law that I spoke to said that basically they can't be doing interviews or writing a memoir about the specific things that they did when they committed the crime. So they can't talk about, this is how I made up my fake W-2. That's something they can't do, but they can talk about, this is what my prison experience was like. This is how my children are suffering as a result of what I did. But they actually just can't talk about what they did. And maybe that's one of the reasons why maybe Joe was counseled, don't talk about what you did because it could get you into trouble.
More trouble.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So some people I saw online last night, they said that a lot of the questions in the interview felt out of place. From Joe talking about his suit like he was a spokesperson for Men's Warehouse.
That was me.
That was you. But you weren't alone. Other people were commenting. And, Andy asking Teresa how she's going to do her hair in jail. Ridiculous questions, Vicki?
Yes, ridiculous questions. Without a doubt. I wonder, I mean, they of course are doing a second part of the interview on Thursday because Bravo, as you know, loves to stretch these things out. So it's possible that the interview might have been edited a little bit, and I'm moving stuff around to where it makes more sense. But yeah, a couple of those questions were, weird. Like, what is Teresa going to say? No, I can't possibly go to prison. My hair must look good. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
She's got other things on her mind, and rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Exactly. All right, so we've been getting a lot of response on NJ.com last night and today. I just want to read a couple comments. One commenter said, while they certainly should be punished and due time for what they did, I don't quite understand the joy some posters take in others' misery. And, you have to admit, I mean, every time the conversation went to the little girls, you actually felt for Teresa and Joe. At least I did. Correct?
Well, I don't think anybody thinks that Teresa does not love her children, that Joe does not love his children. I think there's like two levels of commenters. There are the people who are incredibly gleeful and they're like, send them to jail, they're trash, they're scum, whatever. And then there are people who I think are just frustrated by the lack of them stepping up and taking responsibility. And I think maybe people in the first camp, but certainly people in the second camp, they acknowledge that it's terrible for the girls. It's terrible for the elderly parents. But they have a really hard time feeling sympathy for people who have committed crimes, not really stepped up to the plate and admitting responsibility. And then there's that whole deal at the sentencing where they seem to do the same things that they did before in not putting stuff on their financial disclosure statements. The same things they got in trouble to before. And it's like, what is wrong with these people?
I want to read one more comment, and this is actually pretty interesting. Joe's wannabe wise guy act is pretty stupid. He asks his wife on national television, what are you going to do if another woman touches you? Vicki, did you cringe?
Of course, I cringe. I'm cringing right now. You know, he could have just meant, oh, what are you going to do if somebody like, tries to beat you up or something? But that's not how it came out. And yes, that was awful. And does he not understand that he really should not be cracking jokes at this point? It's not the venue, it's not the time. Too soon, Joe.
Not a good look. All right, Vicki, you were on social media for the bulk of the interview.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reaction on Twitter last night?
Well, the people that I saw a lot of were the people who were kind of outraged by what's going on. Again, what we discussed before, the inability to step up and take responsibility. But there were a number of people who are, Teresa has a legion of fans who are really supportive of her. And, quite frankly, people who meet her in person, I've met her in person, she seems to be a very genuine person. She's very likable. And by Joe's accounts, she really had very little to do with this. She got sucked in by him into this mess. And so they were kind of angry, actually, at the lawyers, saying, her lawyers didn't do enough, and Teresa's blaming her lawyers. I don't know if Teresa's really blaming her lawyers in this case. But the fact that she really didn't seem to think that she was going to get any jail time means that somebody didn't get into her head and make this clear to her that they probably should have. But yeah, I mean, her fans seem to be now saying, oh, it's her lawyer's fault. And I just don't know if that's the case.
All right. Well, Thursday night is part 2. Right now, I want to take a quick look at that interview. Let's see what it looks like.
Next time, on part 2, in court papers you claimed that the Real Housewives of New Jersey is scripted. Were you told, to flip the table? Your attorney had said that you have a drinking problem.
I might have a little problem, yeah. I'm going to lie.
Do you feel any resentment towards your husband for putting you in this position? Are you worried about being deported after you serve time?
All right, now, must-see TV, Vicki, correct?
Well, I won't be watching it because I'm going to be away. But yes, I think I'm really waiting for that question that Andy asked about whether you feel any resentment towards your husband, because that is really the question that I would love to ask her.
And Teresa's saying that a lot of that stuff on Real Housewives is scripted. Vic, my head is exploding now.
Really? It's scripted? I mean, come on. I mean, Anthony, you and I have discussed this in the past that that table tipping was one of those lightning in a bottle moments. I don't think that was scripted, but I think certainly there is some discussion about what the storylines are going to be going forward that everybody is pretty much on board with. I think maybe they hide things from some people. I don't know necessarily if everybody knew about the latest scandal that one of the castmates slept with his wife's mother. I think right. People had to know that was going to be coming out.
Contrived, perhaps, not scripted.
Contrived.
All right.
Contrived.
Well, Vicki, once again, you've brought enlightenment to the Giudice saga. You've helped us all sort this thing out, and everyone be sure to follow Vicki Hyman on Twitter @VickiHy. That's VICKIHY. And don't forget to read her Housewives recaps every Monday morning on NJ.com. Have a great afternoon, everyone.